Okay, so let's talk about the story. It was written by Lauren Groff. She's a writer that published a first novel called The Monsters of Templeton that was prized by Stephen King. Then she wrote, among other works, Fates and Furies. That is a book that caught the attention of the critics and won different prizes, and for which Barack Obama personally wrote a letter to her saying that it was one of the most interesting books that he had read in the year it was published, in 2015. And his latest publication is this book, Florida, that contains this story in June 2018. Story is was published in the New Yorker, and let's see what you think about it. Let's start with our usual round. So let's say, for example, Aurora, what did you think of the story?
I loved it, really. I think it's very, very good, a very good story, because of how it's written, and I love the character and how she expresses herself, how she speaks about her children, and how we get the mood she is in, and I think it's very, very beautiful. I can leave it now and take and speak later a little more, because I think it's really, really beautiful.
Nice. Andrea, did you like it?
Actually, I'm not quite sure. Like, I think it's okay. I like the style in which it's written. I feel it's very written, but I didn't know what to make out of the story. Like, I wasn't sure. I didn't connect so much with the story. So actually, I'm expecting a lot of the debate.
Okay, Jessica.
Not really. No, I didn't really like it. I think it started many things, or it gave many hints that were never carried through. Too many, and I didn't feel it pulled you in enough for her to get away with this, with not finishing what she started. I'd like to. I have my own. I think it's my own personal interpretation of the end, which is the thing that could save the story, but I don't think that's what she wrote. It's just me. I'll tell you later.
Okay, thank you. Angela?
Yes, I'm with Jessica and Andrea. I didn't like it a lot, but because as we read before the snows of Kilimanjaro, the line story really reminds me a lot. It was like exactly the same. I mean, how was the story with this illness? So it's like, I don't know, I found it a bit bored. And about the main character, I didn't understand her a lot. I would like to speak about this because I also didn't understand her personality.
Okay, Eugenia?
I don't know, as Andrea said, I don't know if I like the story or not. I'm not sure. I like the style. I think it was original, and it really kept me reading. I didn't feel bored, but also I think that my expectations were different because I read The Midnight Zone and I thought of The Twilight Zone, and I thought it would be a horror story, and then it wasn't. And I was like, okay, once again, I have false expectations that never materialize. But as I think Jessica said, it promised a lot of things and then didn't deliver. I wanted a panther, and I didn't got a panther, and I was mad because I think it's mainly like one of Chekhov's rules of writing, Chekhov's gun. If you put a gun on a story, you need to deliver with it. There has to be a purpose for putting such a big story element inside. And the panther was a big element from the start, and then it was nothing. I don't know if it was a metaphor and I'm dumb and didn't get it, but there was no panther, no obvious metaphor for what the panther was. And yeah, it was a bit of a letdown. I'm sorry. I don't know why I would rate this if someone asked me.
We'll do a poll later.
No, please. I don't know what to vote.
Now you don't want the poll. Like, make up your mind.
Yeah, but it's hard because I don't know. Maybe a 5.
I don't know.
I don't know what to think.
I know the degree, the mark that I will give it. Colleen, what did you think?
I liked the story. I liked her writing style, the way that she described things, the words she used. I also, for me, it kind of kept me in suspense because I felt like, she was already sick and then this happened. And I kept wondering throughout the story, is she going to die or not? So that was, and there were points where I thought maybe she had already died. So yeah, I liked it because it kept me reading until the end. And even at the end, like, you don't know if she's gonna live or die. So yeah.
Okay, Catherine?
I believe the story was okay. I read better. It was interesting. It was well described. I think the beginning gives away a lot of characteristics of the main character. I did not like the main character. I didn't connect with the main character, but it was interesting to read it. I think I kind of like knew what was going to happen from the description at the beginning, but it was interesting to know from her perspective. I do agree that I believe the panther, or it was a metaphor. I don't think it was probably her insecurities and her fears. That's what it represented to me. But overall, it was okay.
Thank you. Mo, did you like it?
Yeah, I don't know if I liked it or not. There's parts of it I appreciate. I appreciate the characterization of the main character. I think it's different, and it's that this character is allowed to be the way she is as a woman. I think like that's something we don't see very often. But I did feel a little bit like let down at the end. Like I was reading it on my phone and I tried to keep scrolling. I was like, okay, there must be more. Like that's it. I think I was reading afterwards, trying to find some reviews and things. And in the collection, Florida, the book that this story is in, apparently there's several other stories with the same character. So I feel like maybe we're missing the bigger picture. Like, I don't know, like maybe they're all like this, but it makes me feel like maybe you're supposed to read the entire collection together, like they're supposed to work together. Because just as it is, it's okay, it works independently, but yeah, like some other people were saying, it was just a little bit like, oh, that's it, like, don't know, felt a little bit underwhelmed at the end. And yeah, the writing style, personally, I didn't really care for. Like there was definitely moments where I was like, ugh, I just felt like she was like trying way too hard to be like literary or to be like clever, but that's just me personally. Like it's not that it's bad, I just didn't like it. Didn't resonate with me personally.
Okay, welcome, Margot. What did you think of the story?
Yeah, well, I must have the opinion, so sorry about that. But I enjoyed it. I didn't think it was an amazing short story, but I liked it, and I was kind of surprised by by the opinions I did hear. I've heard her in an interview once, and I think this really seems like she's writing herself. It seems like her personality and her husband and her 2 children, totally. And for me, it was interesting, and I like the Panther. I thought it was a story completely about fear for me, and the Panther symbolizes fear, and a lot of times the thing you fear doesn't materialize itself. That's what usually happens with fear, except maybe fear of death, which always will. But and I also like that it seemed also in a way related to fear as when you're in a big emergency, then you can't have fear, which is kind of what, for me, it was very much about that. She gets the really bad thing, stay kind of in control with what's happening. And everyone else, when he comes in, and we see a lot, her reading fear in others. Like, I feel like we keep getting, I did part of so I'm not sure what to think about that. But
we can barely understand because the sound and the image is freezing. I think we lost the last few sentences.
It's okay, just that part of where she's having, it seems like an out-of-body experience, and that part I didn't absorb too well. I was reading a little quickly, but I'm not sure what I think about that. I'd have to read it again. But yeah, I enjoyed it, and to me it gave me, I thought, okay, I'll think about this later, and that's why I like talking about it in a group, talk it through. I don't know. Is the sound okay now? I'll cut it out for now, so it doesn't.
Yeah, it's like it comes and goes. But we could understand most of what you were saying. I did like the story. I enjoyed it a lot. I like the writing style and the way and the plot. What it happens, which is quite simple. It's just someone who falls in a cabin when she's isolated, and that she has to stay awake during the night. So she plays games with the kids and tries to survive. She's delirious in the middle of the night. We could debate if we want to look too much into the story, if she dies at that point when she has this extra physical experience where she walks all around the house. I just took it as it is, without any metaphors there. Like she just is delirious because of her falling and her head trauma. And then the husband comes, and the ending is an open ending where we don't know if she's going to die or if she survives, and that's all. There's also the panther going around, which can be a metaphor for many things. The most probable, we will have to read, as Mo was saying, the entire book, the Florida book, but it's most likely just existential threat, the fear of dying. But it could also be like someone said here, the insecurities. Yeah, maybe she wants to be as a mother or as a person, as bold, as strong as a panther. It can be also the fear of the outside world. It can be, well, just death, like panther being death itself, or fear of death, which is more likely. I think that the story is very well told. I usually don't like the writing styles where it's too simple, too sentences too short or too simple. For me, if someone that is 12 years old can write something like that, it's not good or decorated writing style. Of course, there are a lot of works that can be like that, but the more delicate and the more convoluted that plot and writing style is, usually for me it means that the author has a lot of control over the language and can provide much more. Even if sometimes providing much more is just being very simple in the writing style. So overall, I like the story. What you were saying, Margot, about being herself, it's very likely. Like, yeah, she has 2 sons, husband and a puppy, and she thought about this story when she was vacationing with her family for a spring break. and that's when she came up with the story. For what I read about her other works, the main character is very likely to be the way she thinks. Like, for example, when she's asking interviews what she thinks about motherhood and the typical question of, oh, how can you be compatible as being a mother, taking care of your kids and write at the same time, she's like fed up with all that, and she says that she's not guilty for having to travel a lot and work a lot, and that her husband is also very capable of taking care of the kids. And she has not the typical perspective of how a mother should be. And one of the criticisms that I read to one of her other books, the one called Fate and Furies, is that it's against marriage, the institution, the sacred institution of marriage. Like, people didn't want to read because of that. So that makes me like her more and her writings. So, okay, we had different perspectives here. Some of us liked it, some of us didn't. What else did you think about the story?
If this woman is meant to be her, because I really had no patience with the main character. Only when she's injured and she keeps her sons comforted, then maybe. But how she describes herself, I had no patience at all for her. If this is her, it's very honest. But maybe she accepts all her failings a bit too much. She could do something about them. And I think some of you mentioned whether she dies or not. I like to think that she dies in the end, and that when her husband walks in, that look of absolute fear on his face is that he finds her dead, basically, and she's floating around in the panther somewhere. Otherwise, the story has nothing for me.
Yeah, that could be it.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. That maybe, yeah, we're seeing her. Maybe she already died, like when she went off in the forest, and we're just seeing her sitting around, but to everybody else, she's dead. That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with Jessica. I also thought that she dies at some point, maybe when she thinks she's like projecting outside of the cabin. Because, you know, at the very end, like she did like open and shut her eyes, but that's the only interaction she has with like the children. She didn't speak or anything. So maybe I thought it was like a metaphor for like her soul like being outside her body. I don't know.
Yeah.
It fits the narrative because, yeah, she doesn't talk to the kids and she doesn't do anything. Like, the older kid is the one who feeds the dog and does everything around, and she's sleeping all the time that happens until the husband arrives. So it could be both. Maybe she's dead, or maybe she's just alive, barely conscious.
I agree with Jessica as well. I did not have much patience for the character. I believe she was useless, but maybe that's how I portray her in my head. The author does a good job explaining that from the very beginning of the story, how she feels in debt to her husband for not being capable to do so many things and taking care of most of the responsibilities. I kind of felt bad. I did not empathize with her towards the end. And I just felt terrible for those children. I just couldn't help it. But if you are in a situation where you're in danger, there's a panther out there and you're in the middle of nowhere in a swamp and with children, wouldn't you take precautions? That's the only thing that I just kept like ringing in my head. And it was sad to read the rest of the story. I believe she survived, because I believe Mo mentioned that there's other books, other stories. So I think she does survive. Usually when a person suffers a concussion in the head or head trauma, obviously you're not gonna be able to speak. You're not gonna be able to move that much. So I believe that she was showing signs of concussion or head trauma at that point. But the fact that her husband walked in and looked at her and she was still thinking what was going on, makes me believe that she survived.
Yeah, as I see it, I see it like that too. I see it more than the midnight zone. Maybe see the title is the midnight zone because of this accident and what happens through this night. But I see it more like a twilight zone between the see her personal experiences of fear of not being competent enough because she doesn't fit the stereotype of a mother of a family woman. And through this midnight zone, she gets to the other side. She finds that she says that that her children were not unhappy, and she says to that in the future they will be like her father who takes care for the people they love and everything. So I see it as a passage from fear to thinking that that everything is. I'm listening to the storm. It's she goes from fear to being reassured through this experience because her children were able to take care of her, and she sees when the husband comes back that he really is afraid for her, that she cares for her. And so yeah, I think she survives, maybe, possibly.
Yeah, I didn't dislike her. I mean, I thought she recognized what she considered shortcomings, but yeah, I felt like some of that was just that she didn't feel the traditional mold of what a mother should be. You know, the father ended up doing most of what we think as a mother should do, but I didn't. And yeah, I felt like the children, they seemed quite happy. Their interactions with her seemed, at least from her description, seemed quite happy. So
It seemed to me like it was more just a reversal of the general gender duties, and even the way she describes how sometimes she has very, very good energy and the rest of the working and she snaps at the children. Like that's what you would traditionally see in a father, and we don't. I don't know. I wouldn't be so surprised to see that in a short. And I was just looking because I didn't know that it was the same character in the short stories of the book. And I just looked and this is the 4th out of 11 short stories in that book. So maybe we can assume she lives on in other short stories if we haven't, I mean, I haven't read it. I don't know if anyone has.
Well, I don't.
And oh, sorry.
Sorry, just interrupt 1 second. But she's not in all of the stories in the book. She's just, I think she's in 4 or 5 of them. Yeah. I haven't read the book either, but that's what I.
But this one's towards the beginning, like it's lovely, unless they're all in a.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
The one thing I just saying how she's looking at the husband and she sees his fear. And she says it was best, it was elemental, like wind itself, like the cold sun I would soon feel on the silk of my pelt. So, which I assume is a reference to the panther. So there, I don't know, did anyone see, like she's identified, she is the panther, or she travels into the panther when she's tripping, or I don't know, I didn't realize the last word was pelt until just now.
Yeah, during her out-of-body experience, she's also the panther at times. Like there's where she's, I don't remember the exact words, but something like she feels the plants on her skin as she's like stalking through the swamp, and like she definitely is the panther at some point there. I didn't quite get that part either, like what we were supposed to take away from that, or if there was something specific that the author was thinking related to that, or if it was just imagery.
Well, she leaves her human body for always, is what I thought. Is the way I insist that she's dead. Instead of coming and going and out of body experiences, she definitely goes at the end into the panther or whatever.
Yeah, I think the thing is like the panther like symbol is very open for interpretation. So for example, I thought it could be like a metaphor for like her wild part, like the feeling of not fitting completely in society, maybe. And also it's interesting, like the title, the Midnight Sun. Like I have been reading is about the different layers in the ocean, and it's like the darkest, no, not the darkest, the middle part is a very dark area. But about the character as well, I want to say that I actually like the character. Like I think she just have like a different approach on traditional motherhood, but she did care for the children. So I don't know what's wrong about her actually.
No, the only thing wrong is how she feels sometimes, because she says at the beginning that she feels as an incompetent, but not that the way she is wrong. That she, in my opinion, she feels a little insecure sometimes, at least. Mm.
It's curious because I didn't feel that she was insecure or that she was feeling weak or anything like that. I think she identifies her weakness. That's just a different thing. Like to know where you stand, what you are, what are your capabilities, your pros and your cons, and she knows very well how herself is. So she acknowledges this and seems to be very comfortable in her own skin. At least to me, I didn't get the feeling that she was really feeling like, no, like there's one thing feeling incompetent for something, and the other. And another thing is knowing that you're incompetent of something. Like if someone asks me, I don't know, can you play football? And I will say, no, I have no idea. But that doesn't mean that I feel incompetent or that I feel bad with myself. It's just that I know that I don't know, which is, I think that that's what happened to the character regarding what she does and her motherhood. Like I don't think she feels comfortable with it, but she acknowledges that she lacks a lot of stuff that her husband has to do. Regarding that, the ending, the words at the end where she talks about the silk of the belt, I understood it as a poetry way of describing something in her delirious that is mixing with reality somehow, because in my line, the way I understood the story is that she just had the concussion and she's living the trauma, the head trauma, and that's it. So if you don't read too much into it, it's just that like the husband grabs her and she's going to see the sun, and in a poetical, not even metaphorical or anything deeper, just in a poetical way, she mixes for a bit herself with the panther, saying that she's going outside and that the husband is very, very scared for her. But that's all I read there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this incompetence in certain areas of life, it's not, we don't know exactly what she's talking about, as so many other things. You know, what areas in particular is she incompetent in? Why is she, what's wrong with her that she's losing weight? You know, there's all these things that we don't know. We don't know how far she feels comfortable with this incompetence because we don't know what it is. And all these things that annoy me that we don't know.
I got the feeling that maybe she was sick, because she said she'd lost so much weight, but then she said she loved eating. So I got the feeling that maybe she had been sick, and that was, you know, one of the reasons why her husband was worried about leaving them. Also added worried. I mean, not just that they wouldn't have a phone, but that, you know, But
But
I
why not tell us that she's been sick? It serves absolutely no purpose to hide the information. From my point of view, it doesn't help the story at all.
no. Mm.
I sometimes like when not all the information is there and there are hints of what could be are there, but just for us to imagine or to see different things that could have been happening there. Like, yeah, it could be an illness. Maybe she has cancer or God knows what. But maybe she's just like, I don't know, looking like doing a diet and she has lost a lot of weight and still she likes food. Like, we don't know. But that's something I like in the story. Like, it's not everything completely true for us, but it's something that we have to think about.
Yeah, oh, sorry, Colleen.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was disagreeing that I like it when they do that too in stories, just because it keeps me, I engage more with the story when I'm like, when you have a little investigator role almost. And also sometimes stories work a little bit like therapy, because when it's not all outlined, you're seeing the things that are resonating with you in that moment. No, or like when I started reading it, I was like, is this dystopic? Do they not have food because society is collapsing? You know, whereas probably normally I wouldn't read it like that. So I think it's always I really like it when authors leave details out and then we get to have more of a debate. And I don't know.
Yeah,
and then I see what's working. Sorry.
Yeah, she definitely left it open, because she not only did she say she lost a lot of weight, but she also said that they had been through a lot of problems and that's why they had a difficult time, but you didn't know why. You know, you didn't know what the difficult time was, and that's why they decided to go to this camping site instead of, to a beach or whatever. But yeah, there was definitely the beginning part where something was wrong, but we just don't know what it was.
Maybe it's the portrait of a family which is going through difficulties as any other family. We just get a glimpse of a moment in the lives of these people and how they react in a crisis, in a situation, in a given situation. But yeah. I don't think we have to, or we have to, we can, I mean, but I don't ask myself too many questions. I just observe and get an idea of what can be going through. Huh? For me, it's as I see it is just the picture of a crisis in a family that ends well. That's my.
Yeah, I was gonna say something similar. I think especially with this type of story where there's not really like that much of a plot, it's more just like this is this thing that happened. It's exactly a moment, a snapshot in the life of these people. And so I like that aspect of it where she just sort of mentions things as you would if you were talking to yourself. Like, you're not going to be like, oh yeah, because last year I had an eating disorder or whatever. You're going to just be like, yeah, I lost weight even though I love eating or whatever. And there's other moments of that too where it's kind of allusions to things, but we don't get much detail. I don't know, maybe there's more in the other stories as well, like maybe you're supposed to piece them together, but to me it felt like natural that we don't get all of the details, and it's not really relevant to this story. Like, we have all of the relevant things we need to know, that she feels a bit uncomfortable in her role as a mother and a wife, and now I don't know, she has to kind of deal with that in the moment of what does that mean if now I've hit my head and I'm alone with my kids, like how does that affect my reaction?
don't know that it 100% achieved that, but I think that it was like, that's what it's going for.
This that you're saying it matches what the author said in the interview for the New Yorker. The part where you're commenting, Mo, that we are inside her hair, so we are looking at things from her perspective, and you don't explain to yourself the things that you know. Like if you are going through cancer, you're not going to say out loud, "Oh, I'm having cancer." No, you're just going to say, "I lost a lot of weight." Like, you know. And what she said in the interview is that what happens in terms of the plot, talking about this story specifically, what happens in terms of the plot is subsidiary to what happens in the psyche of the mother. And it makes all the sense that this is like this. And I agree also with Aurora in the sense that we are observers and we just have to deal with the information that is given to us and maybe interpret, and we can think what we want, but that's it. And we don't even need to understand everything. We don't need to know every single detail, because the information that is given for us creates a picture that is the picture that wants to be told. The author wants to talk, which is what I'm trying to say is that if the author wanted us to have a clear picture of what is happening there, then she will have put all the details. But since she didn't, then the story that we're presented is the only one that we can understand, and this as it should be. We don't need to know all the little details.
I also thought she.
Sorry, yeah.
Oh, I was going to change the topic, so go ahead.
No, yeah. To me, like if you take out the possibility of her dying, and if you don't want to think about what represents the panther, and we don't know what happened with her, and you say maybe it's not really relevant, so you have like a story that is too simple for me. Like it's not very interesting as a story, you know.
I think part of the story was like seeing the glimpse, such a personal glimpse from inside of her head. Like one thing that I really liked were her descriptions of her children, because they were so honest. It was like she said at one point, she said of the younger one, yeah, he was so willing to help as he never is, you know, and then the older one, she was like, oh yeah, he's not very bright, you know, but he organized it. So I mean, that was part of what I liked about it, was the way that she described things, and she talked about things. But yeah, I think maybe it was more a story to show like a glimpse inside of a life, like a crisis, as Aurora said, more than something bigger.
Yeah, something to add to this path of thought is that she doesn't call the kids by their names. It's just the bigger one and the eldest, or whatever she describes them, but without talking about his names. Which is maybe how third time thought process happen inside our heads, when sometimes we just don't name things. We just think of them because of their characteristics or the emotions that we feel towards them, and stuff like that, without having to necessarily name them and describe them completely.
And she goes as far as to forget their names, but I think that's just a result of the concussion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I found it funny how she speaks about how she thinks about the voice, because I've heard colleagues or people I know talk about their children, and they say, yeah, the big one, the bigger one, or the smaller one, but when they are talking to other people, but she talks to herself about her voice as the light hair one, the smaller one, the bigger one. That was funny for me. And I don't know. I don't see the story as simple, but subtle, because it's a flow of many feelings that she shows, no? And in this particular way of I mean, with the words and the vocabulary and the expressions used, when she says about her that it's her most expensive pet, the hair. That's a way
Yeah.
of. That's funny. That's fun. I love these details.
I
Yeah,
like subtle stories, but I think that there's a thing like too much subtlety, because then something becomes meaningless. If I don't know if I'm too narrow-minded or too thick-headed, but there are some things that I just simply don't manage to get anything meaningful out of it, and so I'm like, okay, I don't care about this story, I don't care about these characters, because I don't have any ideas of of what is happening or why should I care. So it's like, meh.
Yeah, the
That's
thing
what
is, you don't always need all the details. I agree, and it's good to have an open story, but I don't think it's well written enough
yeah,
for her to allow herself to omit all these details.
I agree. We had here subtle stories that are very much open to interpretation, and everyone has their own opinion out of it. But in this one, it's like not even much happens for you to form your own opinion out of it. Just, I don't know. I didn't hate it, but it's like it leaves me, I don't know, almost just like I started. I learned nothing new. Nothing happened. I want. It's not like I want to read short stories like action movies with a lot of, I don't know, high speed chases or guns or things like that. But I want some substance, and I didn't get it with this one.
I think my biggest problem with the story was the opposite of what some of you are saying, is that it wasn't subtle. Like, yeah, there are some details we don't know, but everything else about the character is very plainly stated. And maybe that's just a product of the genre, which is probably part of the reason why I struggle with short stories in general, because you don't really have time to get to know the characters by their actions. So she kind of just says it like, yeah, my husband married an incompetent person, and I agree because I treat my children like XYZ. And it's like, oh, okay. Like, I would prefer to see that through story and actions and come to that conclusion myself than to have somebody just state it. But with a short story, I don't know, you have to be very, very skilled to be able to do that in such a short period of time, to like build up a convincing picture of a character, like Eugenia said, that we care about. Because I would agree, it's just because I liked the idea of the character. I don't think she was a bad person. I don't think, like, I didn't dislike her, but also I don't really care what happens to her, just because I only knew her for 2 minutes. Like, oh, is she gonna die? Is she not? I'm like, I don't really care if she dies or not. Like, she's a fictional character that I've known for 2 seconds. So, but that's not just this, but I don't know. I guess this story kind of hinges on you, yeah, caring about the character, because that's all it is. It's just the character. Like, that is the story. And because I didn't really care about her one way or the other, it was just sort of like, oh, okay.
But I think it's also, I mean, I guess in more than fiction, it would be like autofiction, given what we know, which I know is a genre that, at least to me in Spanish, like you say, me da pereza, you know, like I'm a little lazy with. But still, for me, it's a short story of someone working out their anxieties a little. And I feel like I'm a little distressed when I see nobody likes this character or anything. So I'm like, oh, everyone's being like, yeah. Insecure confidence, and I felt the same thing. Like, she's not that subtle. Like, the story is different in different ways, but for example, she's identifying her husband with her mother, because when she talks about how she just wishes her mother were there as she was by her bedside, and she's like this big physical presence who can block out the light. And then at the very end, the husband is in the door blocking out the light. It's like her mom came finally. So it's like even in her partner, she's trying to find the mother and a caretaker because she herself is not able to be a caretaker. And at the same time, kind of what Adrian was saying earlier, which is she completely acknowledges it and is practically not apologetic about it, which to me is kind of new to see in a female character, that she wouldn't, because she says something about that feeling when you know that the other person is doing more than you, but you have no intention of repaying them. And I feel like I rarely see that in a female character in literature, that is just like comfortable being like, I have no intent of balancing this out somehow. I don't know, at least it's different from what you usually see, I think, but yeah.
Yeah, I also like this this side of her character. Like for me, as I said before, I feel that she feels very comfortable with the position she has in the relationship and with the kids, even if it's maybe, I was going to say unfair, not unfair, just not balanced, not completely equal with the husband. But we don't know the rest of their life. We don't know what she does for a living, or what he does, or how they survive, or how they organize all their areas of their life that we can't see. So maybe, yeah, maybe the husband is doing more with the kids, but maybe she's doing more with other sides of their existence together. So we will have to know more about the family.
But I think she feels a little uncomfortable because she says, it is exhausting, living in debt that increases, but you have no intention of repaying. So she feels a little uncomfortable. I think she feels, but she's not willing at all to change the way she is. That I agree too. That's the way she is, and she's going to keep that way. But I guess she has her doubts. And what they do in their lives, I don't know, but she says that the only things that interest her are the books and her boys, no, and her children, and that's what she's devoted to. And the husband is I don't know. But it's interesting that we are saying that the husband has to assume many tasks that she is not willing to do with the children. But I mean, why not? Why should she do these tasks? It's both of them taking care of the children. So she chose to the things to do, the things to take care for, and the husband is going to do the rest or not. But why not? Why not?
Yeah, I think what's interesting about the characters, because someone was saying this earlier, but if the roles were reversed, they probably wouldn't question it. If it was a man who was leaving most of the child rearing and the emotional aspects up to the woman, he probably wouldn't sit there thinking that he's building up a debt. He would just think, I mean, I don't know, okay, everybody's different, but in general, like, okay, that's just the way it is, and that's fine. But because she's a woman and society tells you you're supposed to be the nurturing one, you're supposed to be the emotional one, you're supposed to be the caretaker, in the sense that, yeah, I agree that she does feel a bit uncomfortable about it, even though she's maybe, like, logically she's okay with it. She knows it's okay, that she knows she's accepted, that's who she is. But there's still this voice of society, and maybe also her husband, and maybe whoever, telling her, no, you should be fitting into this role. But I don't know, I do feel kind of bad for kids. Like, it would be good to have both parents, like, there as emotional support and caretakers. Like, I don't mind that she's a woman, but, like, she's a parent, so, like, I don't know, to view your kids as science experiments is a little bit like, why did you decide to have children then? But don't know. So I must.
See,
I found a little
I
bit.
agree with that. I agree with that. I think the way I perceive the character is a little selfish. When she talks about, well, you know, I have a debt that I will never pay, or I only do things that I like to do, and my children, the big one and the little one, are just like petri dishes, you know, and little culture human beings. I don't know. I perceive a lot of selfishness. And perhaps that's the reason why I didn't really enjoy the character that much. And you're right. I mean, a parent is a parent, whether you share that responsibility or whether one does more than the other, or society has specific roles for everybody. I think a parent is there to take care of the children, and it has to be responsible.
See, I got the impression that she's not only incompetent as a caregiver, but in life in general, in all aspects of life. If the husband takes after the children more, and he's also the one who seems to work more, who rushes off when there's an emergency, you know, I just got the impression that she's incompetent in everything. Maybe there's a reason for this. Maybe it's an illness, maybe, I don't know, but in all aspects of life, not just the children.
To that point, I was hoping, sorry.
What? That it's not a question of roles, of it being honest, because of her being honest, because she's not going to fit into the role that women should look after their children that society has. I think it goes further than that. She doesn't fit into any role because she's incompetent at everything. It has nothing to do with gender stereotypes.
I agree with Jessica with that. I was also thinking that if she had an illness, maybe it wasn't her head and the concussion or the head trauma was going to fix it all. Not sure.
I also think it's interesting because we know that because of what she said, but the reaction of her husband was always quite loving. He seemed to not feel, at least from the little that we got from him, you know, he was the one that wanted to kiss her and she turned her cheek to him, you know, so I never got the feeling that he resented her in any sense, although he was there very little. And when she gave the kids a bunch of heavy loaded food to try to calm them, so that would say like, okay, maybe you're not so good at what you're doing, but I don't know. I mean, the way she dealt with the kids, though, I got the sense that she was a loving parent at least, you know?
Yeah. I didn't have the feeling that she was a bad mother. And I think actually that the children were happy and were very well fed and very well maintained and very well emotionally growing kids. Regarding this, I think it's interesting if we have a look to the interview that she gave to the New Yorker, the author. Can you see my screen? Mm-hmm. There's a point that they ask her about the role of motherhood and children in the story, and she asks something like this, where she says, I made the decision before the boys were born that I was going to feel no guilt or shame about my parenting. I'm a good mother and want to spend as much time as possible with my kids, but I travel a lot. I set myself away from my family to work every day. I do not do birthday parties, and I went to one play date in my life and wanted to break the Perrier bottle in the floor and stab myself with it. We have intense conversation in my house about apportioning responsibility, because neither my husband nor wife wants to assume roles based on messed up collective assumptions about gender dynamics. I think that in our society, the idea of motherhood is pathologically ill, and even well-meaning people assume martyrdom in a mother. And later on, she says, yeah, I spend a lot of time out of home, but I still think that my kids are perfectly happy, which fits the character of the story.
In the story, she says, my kids were not unhappy. So that's why I say that I see the story as a passage from feeling uncomfortable to realizing that after all they are a family that can cope with crises and with problems, and that they are altogether happy. No, and I don't think she's not. I don't think she's a bad mother either, and I think she loves her family, not only her children but her husband as well. It's interesting, yeah, an interesting story. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess she makes for an interesting main character just because she so doesn't fit into anything and isn't particularly apologetic about it. You know, it was like, well, this is how I am. It's imperfect, but okay, you know. And then
Yeah,
as the story goes on, she doesn't, you know, I don't know, she didn't seem, yeah, the kid seemed happy and
but it is subtle, isn't it? Because I love when she says, the character says, she says, I hear mommy saying something, I hear my child saying something through water, and that is her way to say that she has this concussion, and she's confused and dazed, and she can't hear well, and she said with two words that is through water. So we see that she's perceiving what the kids are saying very dimly, very badly, and as if she were in deep water. And I find it wonderful. I did really like details like that, apart from the contents of the story.
The title of the story, The Mid-Typhon, as Andrea was saying before, is because the layers of the ocean where there's no light. And there's a point in through the night when she's talking to the kids and playing with them, where they are trying to keep her awake, that they describe this show, and they talk about the mid-typhon, about where the fish are blind because there's no light, which is something that is happening in the cabin and to her. Like the lights are disappearing in the real world and in her head, and in the midnight zone in the ocean, which is a good parallelism.
So I just have, oh, sorry.
No, sorry.
No, this because I like that interview portion where she's saying she was not gonna feel any guilt about this stuff. And then to me it was refreshing to see that the character intellectually feels no guilt, but yeah, obviously still has some guilt. And then there's this line where she's talking about how the whole family was walking through the woods when they had heard of the panther. And they were making they let the puppy loose, running in circles around them, because she said it was bred in her bones that in the face of peril, she would sacrifice herself first. And it's kind of foreshadowing that then she hits herself in the head. She's like, okay, so maybe I'm dying right now. She's in immense pain, and she's still playing with her kids, finds a way to make a game into having them have their meal. You know, she's still sacrificing herself as a mother would, and wanting outside help to come, and outside help eventually comes. But it's kind of this idea of, even if intellectually you can think that, you know, you don't have to support each other equally, things like that, still it's bred into your bones, like these ideas of motherhood and how much sacrifice you should make versus the other person. And I don't know, it's just, yeah, that seemed interesting. But.
Yeah, but the one who is genetically determined to sacrifice itself is the puppy. I understand that, no? So they let the puppy loose just in case that some big animal appears that that the puppy is going to.
Yeah, they may be like good parents, but that's dog owners and trainers, like, I don't know, the puppy's a mess. And he's the one causing all the trouble.
It's true.
Yeah,
it's true.
Poor puppy. If there really is a panther out there, can we blame him?
Didn't even get a name either.
No.
Does anybody get a name in this story? I don't think we know anybody's name. Do we learn
No.
the husband's name?
No.
Even the kids,
No.
I really hope we really get the kids' names when she seems to like remember her kids' names, but nothing ever comes out of it, and they're still older boy and little boy. So
Yeah.
The panther is
that's important because we can't connect as much with the characters if they don't even have names. So I don't know. I feel like I'm just complaining with the story,
Me too. Me too.
we're the
Me too.
complainers today, Jessica. But yeah, it's like if you're going to bait us into thinking that she's going to name her kids and then she doesn't, I'm disappointed.
I do feel like the lack of names made her seem colder, which I don't know that that was the intention of the author, but to me, yeah, being like, oh, the little yellow one and the big brown
Yellow
one or whatever, like definitely, like I know a lot of you got the impression that she really does love her kids and is caring to them, but I did not get that feeling at all from this story. And I think big part of that was like how she refers to them, like she doesn't even use their names, which is not just for your kids but for anyone's like
Anyone, yeah.
rude and like I don't know, detached. So I think for me that contributed to the idea of her as a bit selfish and detached, and then tying into everything she's saying, which she basically says like I was only interested in what I'm interested in. So yeah, but I'm not sure if that was the intention or not.
But if the author has recognized that she did write something about her own experience of a mother, so that makes a lot of things much more clear, no? Because that maybe she's just channeling or funneling the way she's dealing with this way, the way the author is, and how she how she is with herself and with her family, and she just is maybe reflecting on that issues, no, in the story. I don't know. Anyway, I don't think she's a bad mother. I don't think she does not love her family, and I feel I like the character anyway. But it's fun. It's fun how it caught my attention how she refers to the boys. Yeah.
Yeah, I like her as a character. I think spending just 2 minutes with her and seeing all of her flaws so up front, I find it, I don't really like her as a person from that. But then you probably wouldn't like anybody if that's all you saw of them. If like I came on here and immediately told you everything that's wrong with me, you probably wouldn't like me either, you know, or anyone. We all have our problems, and we all have things that we work on or that maybe other people wouldn't like. And if that's all you see, then it's, I don't know, find it hard to like her, which is fine. I don't have to like the main character to enjoy the story, but
yeah, and I guess the story kind of highlights her incompetency, although it wasn't necessarily her fault, but she talks about how she's incompetent. And then suddenly, although, you know, again, the son lets go to push the puppy away and she falls, but then she's kind of also not able to, you know, she's not fully able to take care of herself. So it's almost like she begins with this incompetence, and then there's a very strong example that shows, you know, now that she has a concussion, of course, like she's not able to take care of things properly. Like the children are having to do things, and, you know, because she's been very badly hurt. So yeah, I mean, that to me was a bit interesting that she started out with that and then it just continued, although it wasn't her fault.
I can imagine the author, because she wrote it when they were actually on spring break in Florida, like having this thought now that she feels a bit incompetent with herself and feels a bit unsure about herself. And so she's imagining, I'll imagine as soon as my husband leaves, I can't even change a light bulb. I'm gonna fall off the chair and break my head.
And that's what happened. Like, I'm completely incompetent. He leaves, and then there's a disaster. It's like, oh my god.
Yeah, it's like she's proving his point.
Yeah, she proves her point.
No, but that's like
I don't know. It's like you think clumsy people, and then you read about this fictional character, and you're like, okay, guess now I know the most incompetent person ever. Because I mean, it happened so fast. She's left alone with her children. She even says that she's not that much of a mother and anything, and then she fucks up in the worst way possible. And it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, but then it's not her fault. Like, it's an extraordinary bad coincidence that precisely when she's alone, the bulb goes off and she has to change it, and that the puppy jumps into the kid when he's taking care of the stool or whatever. Like, I don't know. I didn't feel like she was being incompetent at that point. Later, yes, because she's injured.
Well, I say being a mother and forgetting your children's names even after you have a head injury is a bit incompetent.
No, like if you have a head trauma, you forget everything.
Only a bit.
But she could not even hear them properly, so she was seriously injured.
Yeah,
I guess.
No, I think.
But what? No, I was going to say that there's this expression of the self-fulfilling prophecy. Do you know that expression? That I think it's more in sociology or something. That but if one person is or feels clumsy or awkward or something, then something is going to happen because they feel insecure. In this case, I mean, no.
But it's almost like she feels one step because at the very end she says, he comes in and she has a head. It's the story to me is funny in some parts, but he comes in, she has a head wound, she stuck head, which is like the more, what do you say, like bad together thing you could do is to duct tape your head wound, with like and she refers to herself as the passive queen of chaos. And that's kind of like beyond incompetence. It's like you attract bad things, So it's like maybe you have a period in your life, a lot of bad shit happens to you in a row, and you're like, something is more profoundly wrong with me than just being bad at something, And it seems like she has that anxiety, Like maybe there's something, maybe I'm the passive queen of chaos. But I don't know.
Yeah, that's why for me it's so important that I had not really thought that she was dead or she would dead in the end. That's why for me it's important that she doesn't die in the end, because that means that she can go through this clumsiness or this way that she is, this way of being kind of incompetent. If she survives this night, that means that they can go on, and that she is socially feasible. I don't know if that's a correct expression, but
that there is hope for incompetent people. You mean? You don't necessarily have to die.
Exactly.
That's good to know.
That's a good life moral of the story.
Very useful for me and the clumsy ones.
I call that Darwinism.
I also wonder though if she was, I don't know, I didn't see her as truly, truly incompetent, because when she was sick, I mean, after she fell, I mean, she obviously has this horrible head wound, enough so that she can't remember her children's names, but she had the sense to say, hey, get me some gauze, get the duct tape. She put it around her. You know, the kids the whole time were more or less quite calm. And she almost, you know, she got into bed. She's like, okay, we're going to do this. And here's a story. And I mean, actually, I felt like she handled it quite well, given the circumstances. And, you know, her first thought was, well, they can't go out on the roof because small boys can fall off the roof quite easily. And, you know, so she actually, you know, here she is with a horrible head wound, but she's like, I don't want my kids going out with a cell phone on the roof because they could, you know, they could die. Or so I'm not sure. I know she, you know, I know she said she was incompetent, and I'm sure she is, but then during the situation, I actually thought, you know, she handled it quite well. I mean, the children were not overly afraid, which considering that your mother might die, you know, you would think the children, I mean, they could have been terrified.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a sign that she was raising her children properly. She and her husband, that they were raising children that could cope with things in life.
Not only the children that are very well educated and behave very properly when the mother gets injured, but herself seems to have knowledge of how the human body works and what to do in certain circumstances, like for example when you fell down and break your head. Like she knows that she shouldn't move, she knows that she shouldn't go to sleep. That's probably what saved her life. She survives at the end, because some other people would maybe have tried to just go to sleep to have a rest, and then it's when on that kind of damage, that's when the injury to the brain happens. Or maybe she will just try to, I don't know, to walk, to go for help, and then dying because she shouldn't move. It's like she does everything quite correctly, even with the delirious and the trauma and everything.
But I still think that when she says that she's incompetent, I think she means more like the traditional things that society expects from a mother, like cooking a proper meal or like hosting a play date, like.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
But maybe not in life things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
I mean, in life things like cook for your children, but.
Yeah. Well, she did, but she made them like pancakes and loaded cheese.
That's why I say a proper meal.
Proper meals.
with a purpose.
To pass out, but it just made them more energetic.
She did it on purpose, so yeah. So are we going to? I was going to say, are we going to vote today?
I have no idea.
Thank you.
Yeah, this isn't fair. I don't know what to vote. I don't want to vote. Please make me host so I don't have to vote.
It is very unfair because I can't vote, and I will give it a 9 to this story.
Then you vote, and I don't.
Okay, vote a 9 for me.
No, I don't want to. I don't want to vote.
That's definitely too high.
Oh my god. I'm really confused.
The 10 is yours, Aurora, isn't it? This is the secret vote.
I confess.
Yeah.
Does it have like the median? Is there? Yeah.
It shows you how many people, like in a percentage, voted for each number.
Oh, I thought we were gonna get the average, like it was gonna be a mini Goodreads, you know?
Yeah, but you have to calculate it on your own.
Yeah,
oh my god,
quite...
that's bad.
It's bad.
Polarized.
Oh my god, 4, that's low.
No, but that's
25% is A. That's really different.
Yeah, it's really different.
Yeah, but 4 is not the average, right? It's just that that 4 is not the average. It's just that 3 people voted
No,
for.
the larger percent of.
Yeah, but it was
But
the
it's
most
followed with
voted number, and that's
25%.
low.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Eugenia, you didn't put Adrian's 9.
No, I didn't.
Obviously.
She put the 3. The 3 is hers.
No, mine is 6 actually.
Oh,
I
wow.
put 6. Wow.
It's nice,
Actually, yeah, one person is 13%. So one person voted for 3.
Yeah, who did? I wasn't. I'm getting mad now.
And what?
Everyone thinks
And
I
Aurora
did,
voted for
so-
10. So,
Yeah.
yeah. But the vote is secret. So.
It's
Well,
not
if-
secret.
If I had to guess, I will say that the 3 is Catherine.
I would say it's Jessica's.
Right.
Jessica.
I didn't know it was secret.
Jessica is a 4.
No. Oh!
See, we
Don't
know,
show you
we
where
know this
we-
stuff.
But it's
I,
fun to
I
guess.
always
I don't
tend
know.
to give the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, I did, but I don't know. I thought you would be for a 3.
You know, I saw a picture of the
No.
author, and just, so you can see how far my reject of the story and of her goes. She produced also a feeling of rejection, just her photo. I don't know why. I didn't like her face.
That's not fair.
Absolutely no
well,
reason.
Jessica,
I'm going to reveal a little secret now, which is that I was looking to the biography of the author, and Mo came in and saw the picture, and so what's wrong with her? Is she an Alvin or something? Because of the first impression.
Bad reaction.
See a what?
The story, but I feel bad for having a bad reaction. But I was like, oh,
Yeah,
yeah, she kind of looks like the woman from the story. Like, anyway, I'm not gonna say anything else because I feel very bad about my reaction.
I don't know. I
What do you
see her
mean?
very
There's nothing
normal.
wrong with her.
Yeah. She's well. Her
I don't
eyes
see
are
anything
too-
wrong. She looks like a normal person.
Yeah.
Her eyes
Her
are
eyes are
close
closed.
together.
But she seems fine.
She has almost no space between her eyes. It
She
looks
doesn't
weird.
inspire
I'm
confidence.
sorry.
Yeah, no, but even if she didn't look okay, just let's not criticize her by her physique.
Yeah, she's a normal person.
But even if she weren't, it's a writer. We shouldn't care.
No, but this is the impression that she gave. I'm not criticizing her. It's just, I don't know.
Maybe
Anyway.
you saw an equal photo.
I don't know. It felt like as if you're part of the jury in a literary contest, and then you see the author's picture as if you were looking for CVs, and you're like, yeah, something about this person rubs me the wrong way. I'm not going to vote for you. It's like that.
I read the story
I don't know.
before I looked at her picture.
But there's nothing wrong with her. I know. I thought she would be punching a kitten or something like that. Something very bad.
Gives the impression that she spends a lot of money in her hair.
Yes. She has very nice hair.
I didn't get that at all. From just I don't know.
No, I think I don't know. I don't see anything wrong with her.
I'm confusing
Maybe
her with the
an
woman
aura
of
or
the story, and she may not look like that. I don't know. It makes me sad. I wish I had voted the 9 after all. I'm sympathizing with her.
I think that reading the story first and then seeing the picture is what makes prejudices against or for her. Like Jessica didn't like the story, so she didn't like the picture. And I liked the story, so when I saw the picture, I was like, oh yeah, it's cool. So yeah.
And when you were like, yeah, I have a copy.
Yeah, she looks very young, energetic, and fresh. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, the way I was imagining the mother in the story, the main character, it was more or less like the picture, like someone like her.
I don't want to
fits.
sound, I don't know, prejudiced, but she looks like a typical suburban housewife to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like a
she's-
soccer
yeah.
mom. She kind of looks like
Yeah.
that.
Now
A
that you
rich,
say it,
white,
yeah.
blonde woman, American.
This-
Yeah.
She's an all-American girl.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's like the typical like stereotype.
Yeah, totally.
Like blonde, the white shirt on, you know, the kind of makeup and the whole
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the pictures of her. I'm sure there are others that look less like a stereotype.
This reminds me of that I don't remember which meeting it was, but in which we ended up looking at Sadie Smith's picture, saying that she was very beautiful. I don't remember the context, but I thought it was very.
Really?
Yeah, I don't
In the
remember
Miss
why.
Adele one, no.
I don't
Before.
remember why,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was either that one
I
or
don't
the one
remember.
before it, because we were talking about like the
but
one
the next one, yeah.
story maybe.
Oh.
I
Ah,
can't remember why.
But it reminded me of that, and I was like, yeah, we end up talking about authors, authors' physical appearance, and it always ends crazy.
I just Googled Lauren Groff evil, and it's the same pictures. So maybe.
Evil? Why?
Interesting there.
What?
But if you Google Lauren Groff evil, it's the same
Evil?
exact same.
What
You
evil?
really are?
Oh, that photo, that's not right.
She is evil.
I
Well, is Lauren Groff evil?
I don't understand anything.
Well, I use DuckDuckGo instead of Google. Maybe that's why.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you type Lauren Groff evil, yeah, that comes up, this picture. But then if you type Lauren Groff good, then these pictures come up. So
Maybe
I don't know.
that's
I think
the
it's
only
interesting
picture
to
of
see
her.
in Google Analytics how many people have searched for author's name and evil.
Yeah.
Because it's like, what the heck?
Nietzsche evil. I don't know.
But she looks like she's posing in all of the pictures.
Yeah, she's always posing, right? They're like professional.
It looks weird.
They're probably professional.
They're her professional pictures. They're her for
Yeah,
work.
but I don't know.
They're not like
Her
vacation
editor.
shots.
She just needs a more sympathetic one. Like here, this one. You'll
One
see
that
it.
doesn't make her look evil, I guess.
Abby will like her. The one I sent.
Okay, this one isn't very flattering either.
It's like
yeah, but she looks very normal. Looks very natural.
Yeah, she looks
Relatable.
very
No,
normal.
she doesn't. Her eyes are too close to one another. It makes me
Well, that happens sometimes.
close. Oh my god. I don't want to bash her, but they're too close.
Yeah, her eyes are very close.
Yeah. No one noticed it? Am I the only one seeing this? We're so close.
The angle does make her look a little cross-eyed, like in those
Oh, cross-eyed is Bizco English. I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Sorry, yeah.
I've never called Bizco someone Bizco in English before.
Basically receiving awards in a lot of them. But
Yeah.
good moment to have your photo taken.
But why we are talking about her appearance, I don't understand.
I don't know.
Yeah,
we
I mean,
looked it up.
We never talk about the male writer appearance.
Next
No,
time you
yeah,
should find a
I have
picture
with
of
other
the
readers
writer.
because in fantasy, all of the best fantasy authors are like the author of Game of Thrones. They're American, they're old, they're fat, and they're very bad looking. So I talked
Yeah.
about that. I talked about them unflatteringly with my friends before, like, yeah, I love this author, but he's so unattractive. It's crazy. Because they're old and all of them are big and they have very big beards.
Yeah, the hairy feet. Yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, for me it's not it's not a sexist thing. It's just business as usual.
Just shouldn't have authors' photos because it's like when you listen to people on the radio, you never ever see the photo of someone from the radio and think, yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they're completely different.
Yeah, you always imagine someone different because their voice
Yeah.
conjures up an image, and then you see them and you're like, they look like that.
Yeah.
And that always happens to me with voice actors. Recently, I got an ad of a voice
Yeah.
acting school. I don't know what. Have no interest in voice acting, but I don't know, cookies and so. And there was a very famous Spanish voice actor that I knew him from my childhood because I knew his voice so much from so many characters that I couldn't even start to name them all. And he looked like Gandalf or like yeah, or like Dumbledore. He had a very large white beard, and he was like so peaceful and calm, and he was an English. And I was like, no, I didn't picture him like that at all.
Yeah, it's very weird. And when they talk, the actors, and you keep imagine the character in your mind, it's like, no, you shouldn't look like this at all.
And
Like,
then you see an old man, and he was
so
voicing
talky.
Skywalker, and you were like, no, this isn't right.
Like
But I guess
the Harry Potter dubbing actors, like they all were like older, and I
yeah,
was like, so
way older.
weird.
I remember
Like,
the guy that voiced Harry, I always thought that he had a very, I don't know, childish voice, in the one that voiced him in Spanish. And then I saw him, he was like a 40-something-year-old man. And he looked like the typical nerd, and I was like, wasn't expecting him, but I guess it fits. So, but it makes more sense because they're portraying a character. But then with the people on the radio that you, Margaret, talked about, yeah, it's even worse because they're not portraying any character. They're just being themselves. they don't look like themselves.
Yeah, but I guess everyone has a voice that it's like 85% sexier than they are. Everyone, it doesn't matter what age.
Maybe it's because we don't see them and we imagine them as sexier than they actually are.
Yeah. I don't know. Are you going to keep doing these online? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah? Oh,
The
cool.
idea is to continue doing it, maybe not at this rhythm, because we are doing 4 per week. And that's too much. Like, we're doing 2 in Spanish, 2 in English every week. So maybe we'll do just every Thursday. In alternate weeks, 1 in Spanish, 1 in English. And then we'll do novels, like not short stories, but novels, long books in the weekends, which we may do online or in Madrid somewhere, depending on how the virus goes and how we resume normality. But yeah, we'll keep doing online meetings. They're cool.
But less of them, right? Because I don't know about you, but now I don't have as much free time as I had during the quarantine.
Yeah.
Because I go back to work, so I'm missing out on them, and I'm like, oh, I can only go to fewer of them.
Yeah, so maybe 1 every Thursday, it should be enough. 1 in English, 1 in Spanish. And then the books. Like, I have a long list of books that I want to read and that I want to comment and debate. So.
Well, the list of meetings that were rescheduled because of the pandemic is already long. So if we keep adding more books, it's going to be endless.
Yeah. We're reading Station 11. That if you haven't read it, you should.
Oh, no, I read it I read it when it came out, I think.
Oh yeah, you were the one that recommended it, actually. So
No,
I got the idea from you.
When I saw you posted it, like right before the pandemic, I was like, oh, this is an amazing book. And 2 weeks later, we had a pandemic, and I was like,
it was a perfectly chosen book, but the pandemic kind of ruined it. So
I don't have it because I'm actually going to be in Tenerife for months, so I don't actually have the book with me, but I'll still join you and maybe not say so much if it's online. Like,
yeah, we are doing it online, but you already read the book, right?
I read it a while ago, but I remember it pretty well. It's one of those where you're like, I hope this doesn't happen. I better remember all these survival skills just in case.
Yeah, no, I read it long ago because I posted it like several months before the discussion was meant to happen, and then it didn't happen, and we have delayed for several months more. So we are now, like, I read it maybe half a year ago or even more. But still, I think I remember it.
Because it had like a lot of small moments and lots of things that are like worth of commentary, and of course after the coronavirus I don't know, it's worth of a reread with like a fresh outlook, I think.
And just in case I'm gonna go watch so does anyone know what Hay Festival is? it's this literary festival from England, and they have a version in Spain. And it was this week, and they were doing it. It's the first year they did it digital. So today you can still see videos. And for example, they had David Mitchell was on yesterday. It was pretty cool. You can still see that video. Stephen Fry was on. So if anyone wants to browse, I think they're all free today. If you're interested in, it's just like interviews with 40-minute interviews with authors, and they're pretty cool. You know, they're in their home and
Cool. Yeah.
Everyone is home.
Yeah.
Like a long distance interview. That's cool.
if anyone wants to see it.
All right. Does anyone want to add something about the story? No? Okay. So we've been talking about it for more than 1 hour and a half, which is for me the perfect length for a discussion. If you have any suggestion of what to read in the future, short stories, novel, or whatever, let us know, because yeah, we have a long list, but there's always a space for some quality literature more.
Yeah,
So,
I saw
yeah.
you programmed Sapiens, is it called?
Yes.
Which seems a very strange book to program. I haven't read it.
Yeah.
It seems a strange choice.
It is. We have read essays in English before. I don't know how to say this genre. Essays, we call in Spanish ensayos, which is just like divulgación científica.
Essays, right?
Essays.
No, but we don't really say that. I mean, because it's not an essay, it's an entire book. It's like a nonfiction.
Oh yeah, it's not like an academic essay, right?
But it's non-fiction anyway.
Non-fiction, yeah.
Yeah.
So no, I just chose it because people kept recommending it constantly. Like everybody was like, Sapiens is so good, Sapiens is so good, and everybody was saying it's mind-blowing. You have to read it, and I didn't want to read it the first year that I heard of all these recommendations, nor the second year, but the third year I said, okay, I have to read it. So I'm reading it right now, and it's not bad. For me, it's quite simple, like the things it explains about human evolution and how society works and stuff like that is quite obvious, but then he explains it, the author explains it in a very entertaining and very fast way, like if I was 5 years old, so I can understand everything completely and advance very, very fast. So it's quite entertaining.
Okay.
It's like it's a little like another one that's called a brief history of everything or something like that. That's it.
Bill no sé qué, ¿no?
But this Sapiens is, I did like it. It's interesting. And I don't know why, but I remembered in this discussion, I remembered a novel that I like very much. That is a classic. I think it's The World According to Garp by John Irving. Have you read it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
as a recommendation, because I love that book.
I like John Irving a lot in general.
So that's mine.
Okay, I'm writing it down.
Recommendation. Okay.
All right. So
Okay.
we see you on the next one, which is In Other Room, Other Wonders, on Thursday, right?
On Thursday.
On Thursdays, I won't be able, I think, from now on, but I'll try to anyway. Okay.
Okay, but it's because of work or something, because we can always choose another day for the discussions and stuff, depending on who of us can go.
If it is okay for you all, that you don't have to change it for me. But yeah, on Thursdays from now on, it will be a little more difficult.
Yeah, no, we can take these things into consideration because most of us, of the organizers, don't really mind a Wednesday or a Thursday or a Tuesday, as we've been doing. So depending on you all, you lot, with whichever you prefer, then we can do it. Anyways, I hope to see you on Thursday, the one of you that can.
Okay.
Thank you all.
So,
Bye.
bye.
Bye. See you next time.